If you could, head to Psalm chapter number 49. Psalm chapter number 49. This evening I want to speak to you on the topic of who can we trust? Who can we trust? I know it's on a lot of people's minds, especially as we just finished up the election. Who can we trust? And whether or not it's the future of a nation or the future of the next few years or whatever else like that, we want to know, and I should strive to know in our daily lives what and who we can trust. I think of many things in history that were considered to be unbreakable, unbeatable, or in the Titanic's case, unsinkable. That's what the line that ran there, I think it was called the Morning Star or something like that ran this sailing line that was going to travel on this Titanic, this newly made boat. And they basically said, and they told as an advertisement, that this ship, as it traveled from somewhere on the East Coast over to England, they were saying this ship is going to be unsinkable. It's practically unsinkable. And they had started to use some new tech. It was the year 1912, and they were very confident in this new type of tech in this boat, and they were like, you know what, this thing is not going to sink. They were very confident. And again, the ship manufacturer didn't say it was unsinkable, but the advertisements from the people who were setting sail on the boat were definitely saying that it was going to be unsinkable. And as most of you know, it was not, in fact, unsinkable. It hit an iceberg and began to sink, tore a huge hole, and it didn't matter what tech compartmentalizing they had done to the hull of the ship to keep it from sinking. On that day, the Titanic sank with, some 2,000 souls on board. Some survived, many perished. And it's a tragic day, but they learned they couldn't put their absolute faith in that boat. And in this psalm, we're going to learn about some people who had this mistaken faith. They put their trust, they put their faith in this object or maybe in a person, and they were so confident that that thing would be unbreakable, or that that thing would keep their trust, and that their trust was in good hands. And as we study this psalm today, I'd like to ask you, who can you trust? Who can you trust? Let's look at verse number 1 in Psalm chapter 49. Hear this, all ye people. Give ear, all ye inhabitants of the world, both low and high, rich and poor together. My mouth shall speak of wisdom, and the meditation of my heart shall be of understanding. I will incline my ear to a parable. I will open my dark saying upon the harp. Wherefore should I fear in the day of evil, when the iniquity of my heels shall compass me about? The author of this psalm begins by calling people to just listen to the wisdom that he wants to give them. He said, you know what, guys, listen, I've got something for you. He said, I want everybody, whether you're rich, whether you're poor, whether you're low in society or high in society. He goes, this message, this tale of wisdom I'm about to give you is important for everyone. And then he goes, wherefore should I fear? Or why should I fear in the day of evil? What should we fear in the day of evil? Or why? Or should we even fear? It poses kind of a dual thing. Like, why should I fear? What should I fear in the day of evil? And it depends whether or not you should have fear. It's not so much whether you have, fear or it's a lack of fear in this circumstance. That's going to be decided by what you have your trust in. When the day of evil comes, whether that's by, as we see today in our culture, just a society that's for the most part just very wicked and increasingly wicked in its ideals and in its promotion of certain sins or promotion of certain lifestyles, it seems to have this idea of a day of evil. That's why we were so impatient, I think, for this election, and I know many of us have a little bit more peace of mind now that that is over. But when we take a look at the evil that is approaching, the storm clouds rolling in, so to speak, it begs the question, okay, if we're fearful, what do we have our trust in? Because if we're fearful or if we're not fearful, that all depends on whether or not we have a trust in something. If you're going to have trust that the chair you're sitting in tonight is holding you, that means you don't have the fear that it's going to break. So the lack of fear would indicate that you have trust in something. And the presence of fear would mean that you don't have a trust that's greater than that fear, or a trust in something that can help you overcome that fear. And that's what this psalmist, it's a little bit unknown who wrote it, but that's what this psalmist is presenting us. What should I fear? And he begins to tell the story of these men who have different things that they trust in. And they're not named. It doesn't give us really too much of a story, but it's very clear the type of men it's going to talk about. So first of all, we see that the rich man trusts in his riches. Look at verse number 6. They that trust in their wealth and boast themselves in the multitude of their riches, none of them can by any means redeem his brother, nor give to God a ransom for him. For the redemption of their souls is precious, and it ceaseth forever, that he should still live forever and not see corruption. See, so it first presents us with this, what should I fear question? What am I going to fear, or do I have fear? And then it says, you know what, the rich man that we see in the world today, he's going to trust in his riches. And we see right off the bat, and as Christians, we talk about this a lot, because, and I wouldn't say it's because Christians don't tend to be rich or anything like that, but we know as Christians, the Bible talks a lot about it, that material wealth is not permanent. I'm very thankful for that, because if that were the case, I'd be trying to get material wealth right now, I'll tell you what. But I have a little bit, I'm trying to trust in the Lord, and I know He'll take care of that side of things. But material wealth is not permanent. Look at verse number 10. The psalmist goes so far to say, "For he seeth that wise men die, likewise the fool and the brutish man perisheth, and leave their wealth to others." He reminds us that it doesn't matter if you're rich, foolish, wise, it doesn't matter. Every person's going to die, and all that wealth that you may have amassed is just going to sit there right where you left it. So it presents this idea that this man, this rich man, he has trust in his wealth. It says he boasts of it. I don't know about you guys, but I don't have a hard time. I don't have a hard time finding a person who has a lot that doesn't want to talk about it. It's pretty common, right? Especially in this day of social media age, that's a huge thing. If somebody has something that's nice or expensive, guess what? They want you to hear about it, and you usually do. Whether it's a celebrity of some sort, a famous athlete, doesn't matter. If they have something, you are going to hear about it. So then it characterizes this man's whole persona. It says that they trust in their wealth. So if they have a problem, well, guess what? If you throw enough money at a problem, it can fix it, right? If you have, a problem that other people may not have a hard time with or something like that, well, it doesn't matter. I can just throw money at it. So that's what's what this rich man has his trust in. He is going to use his wealth to go throughout life. So when the day of evil comes, well, guess what? If it's a war, this rich man is just going to build a big tower, and he's going to go sit in it, and he'll be fine. He'll build himself a bunker, and he'll be sitting just fine. If it comes to, inflation, or maybe there's a famine, well, this rich man's going to be fine. He's just going to buy up everything. And all his trust is in his wealth. But as this verse kind of warns us, wealth can't solve every problem. Can't solve the problem of death, though many rich men have tried to evade death by some means. Whether that's investing their money in trying to find some immortal potion or whatever else like that, they always want to preserve the thing that they put their trust in. And it's their wealth. They want to preserve all the things that they have. Rich men often are characterized in history by having, this huge hoard of money, this stockpile that nobody knew where it was. I mean, you think of people, legendary figures like Blackbeard the pirate, who, we don't really know if he had this huge treasure trove, but, that sort of thing. All these people who are rich, they're going to continue on trusting in their wealth. Their whole persona is wrapped up in this wealth that they have. And the Bible warns against it. It tells us that they're going to perish. They'll die, and that wealth is just going to stay there. But then also, that if we choose to focus so much on our finances, right? And I think it carries this idea with it that it's not just the rich man here in this passage that it says he trusts in his wealth, he boasts in his wealth. Most of us don't have that today. Not all of us are sitting on a load of cash and, super wealthy or well off. And, some people may be. But what it's warning against is not about having wealth, but about having your trust solely in the material wealth that you have. If you cannot go through life without relying on your finances, whether or not it's going and relying on your finances or maybe your ability to obtain finances and all your trust is on, okay, well, I know if I work and I can save up this much money and then I'm going to be comfortable. Or, you know what, man, there's a couple overtime shifts this week. I can take those and I can earn just enough money to do this. And we can get this sense where we go through life and all we rely on, all we seek is the wealth. All we seek is this trust because as long as we have money, we're okay. And I think that's kind of the way we live in a very materialistic society. Inflation's going up, taxes are going up. So a lot of our thoughts are confined around that idea of finances. And if we just do this or we just do that, is your trust in your finances? Is your whole objective in life to get more finances so that you can be stable? Because with the finance comes control. And if we have this trust in finances, we have this sense of control if everything financially is going right. And that's what this rich man does. And again, I'm not saying it's everybody in this room, but we can get to a point to where riches, as long as we have money, as long as we have this financial gain that we've obtained, whether by working hard or maybe we know that we can work hard to obtain this thing, the riches can become the sole object of our trust. And we can only go throughout life just pursuing this riches, again, not necessarily to be overwhelmingly wealthy or whatever else like that, but we can go throughout life just resting on our finances. If I had loads of money, I don't think I'd worry too much about, maybe if my car broke down. Or if I had loads of money, I don't think I'd worry too much, when my rent is coming due. If I had loads of money, I wouldn't worry so much about this. And we may say those things internally or externally, and it shows our mindset towards those finances. Well, if I just had money, I think I'd be a little bit more trusting of my situation. I feel like I'd have a little bit more control. And we can put riches on this pedestal where it's as long as I can obtain it, or as long as I can keep it, as long as I keep this, my trust, my security in life is defined by that riches. And we can sacrifice God to get there sometimes. Well, there's an extra shift coming up. I can get overtime this week. I'll have to miss church, but if I get a little bit extra money, I can trust in that. And it may not, that may be more where many of us are at. And I'm guilty of the same thing. Sometimes I want to go throughout life and it's okay, well, I don't have to do this because I know I have this money that I can rely on. And really, when we do that, we exclude God from the picture. And it can seem just, okay, well, I'm just providing. I'm just trying to make sure that I take care of myself and my family. But we can misplace our trust completely in wealth. And that's what this rich man did. So whether or not you're there, material wealth isn't permanent. And then secondly, I see that material wealth cannot save you from spiritual consequences. Look at verse number 7. We'll start at verse number 6 again. They that trust in their wealth and boast themselves in the multitude of their riches, none of them can by any means redeem his brother, nor give to God a ransom for him. It doesn't matter how much money you have, it doesn't solve spiritual problems. So you may trust in your riches. You may trust that, as long as I work hard, as long as I obtain my financial goals, everything in life will be okay. As long as I have this wealth saved away that I can live off of it, maybe in the good times and the bad times, and as long as I can trust in that, as long as that doesn't go anywhere, I'll be just fine in life. I'll have control. I'll be all right. But if we sacrifice the spiritual well-being of ourselves, maybe that's spending time with the Lord daily. Maybe that's spending time in church. Whether that's, maybe talking with someone about the Lord in a witnessing situation, a coworker or a friend or someone we're out at door knocking for the church. If we can put our trust in our wealth and forsake the well-being spiritually, the Bible tells us here that this rich man, he's not going to be able to give God a ransom for his soul. He's not going to be able to pay God to gain spiritual benefits. So if your trust is in riches, it doesn't pay off spiritually. I can spend my whole life earning money, but if I forsake my connection with God and I forsake my walk with God, riches aren't going to solve that problem. And like we said before, your riches are going to stay here on this earth. They're not going to have any eternal value. So, we have the man who trusts in his riches. And then not only him, but we also see that the successful man trusts in his achievements. So the psalm goes that, "Wherefore should I fear in the day of evil? Well, they that trust in their wealth." And then it transitions to this idea that the successful man can trust in his achievements. Look at verse number 11. "Their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever, and their dwelling places to all generations. They call their lands after their own names. Nevertheless, man being in honor abideth not. He is like the beasts that perish. This their way is their folly, yet their posterity approve their sayings." Selah. Like sheep they are laid in the grave. Death shall feed on them, and the upright shall have dominion over them in the morning, and their beauty shall consume in the grave from their dwelling. So it carries this idea that there's this success that can be attributed in life. Their house will continue forever. In life, we can work really hard and we can build. Again, it carries this idea that we can achieve something and we can trust in that. Maybe you're trusting that your successes, your legacy will live on after you, whether that's a business that you build or that's a reputation that you can have among your peers, among your friends, among those that know you. There are achievements that people can trust in. They can trust in their reputation. It says that here that this man was thinking that his house would continue forever. He named the lands after him. He thought that his house would continue for generation to generation. Look down at verse number 16. "Be not afraid when one is made rich, when the glory of his house is increased. For when he dieth, he shall carry nothing away. His glory shall not descend after him. Though while he lived he blessed his soul, and men will praise thee when thou doest well to thyself. He shall go to the generation of his fathers. They shall never see the light." So this man spent his whole life seeking the glory and the fame and the riches. He had the riches, and then he trusted in this success that he had. He named his lands after himself. He built this great household. He was going to leave it to his children, and his legacy and fame would be carried on. But just like the riches faded away, it says in that verse that the glory isn't going to descend with him. So if he goes down to hell, the glory, the fame of his name is not going to go down with him. The Bible talks about that God is no respecter of persons. So if all our trust and all of our ideas of security in life are then placed in success and achievements that we can have, it's also misplaced. Verse number 11 tells us that their inward thought is. This is their whole mindset. Their whole idea of security comes from, well, what I have achieved, will stand the test of time. So these men put their trust in their achievements. And we can do the same. We can spend our time building our reputation, our portfolio, our skills, our academic credibility, your fame, your recognition in your field of work, your name among your family and friends and peers and the outside world. But if you trust in yourself and what you can do in life, your trust is going to be misplaced. So not only does this man in the story, he trusts in his riches, he trusts in the success that he can obtain and the success that he brought about. And it carries this idea of self-dependence. He doesn't need anything in order to continue on in life. His trust is solely in himself. His trust is that his name will continue on. His trust is that his honor, his glory will follow him. Trusting in what you can accomplish or achieve, even if it's good, cannot save you. And we know that about salvation. The Bible talks that not by works of righteousness, which we have done, Titus 3:5 tells us, but according to his mercy, he saved us. It's nothing that we can do that saves us spiritually. It's nothing that we can do in life that will put our trust and have that secure. Nothing that we can do in that aspect will save us. Excuse me. And then finally we see, when the day of evil comes, we must learn to put our trust in God, or the wise man will put his trust in God. Look at verse number 15. But God will redeem my soul from the power of the grave, for he shall receive me, Selah. This whole passage talks about, wherefore should I fear in the day of evil? And then it makes this statement, the rich man trust in their wealth and boast themselves in the multitude of their riches. So as they go along throughout their life, they trust in their wealth, they trust in all that they can obtain, and the fame of their name will continue forever. Excuse me, I'm going to take a drink real quick. They trust in the wealth that they can obtain, and their trust when the day of evil comes, that's what they run to. They run to the fact that they have money, they can buy their way out of problems. And then not only that, when the day of evil comes, then they trust in that their house, that the name they've built for themselves will continue on. But this psalmist recognizes that none of those things really matter. He says, but God will redeem my soul from the power of the grave. So when the evil day comes, and again, this doesn't just imply that it means death, and because riches will be left here and fame and glory will be left here that we obtain on this earth, that death is the day of evil. But when evil comes into our lives, bad circumstances, you lose your job, your house has a major damage to it, your car, you get into a car accident, and all these things that can happen. Your health deteriorates. When the day of evil comes, we need something to put our trust in. And the psalmist says, only God can redeem his soul from the power of the grave. And likewise today, only God can redeem us from the day of evil. If you're saved tonight and you put your faith and trust in Jesus Christ for your salvation, God has redeemed your soul. And you know that one day when you die and leave this earth, that your soul has been redeemed by God and that you will spend eternity in heaven. And this wise man realizes that God can redeem his soul. And if we think about that in a realistic context, if God, the infinite creator of the universe, who we know is omnipresent, omniscient, all-knowing, all-present, if we know him as that, all-powerful, almighty, the infinite creator, when we look at everything that he could do for us, if we really all needed wealth, I don't think it would be a problem for God to just give us all wealth. If we really needed perfect health or perfect bodies, I don't think it would have been a problem for God to just give us that and be done with it. If all we needed was fame and glory and for everyone to have a reputation that will stand out among their peers, I don't think God would have a problem giving that to every single person. But God chose to do the one thing that cost him something, and that was send his Son to die for us on the cross. So when we look at everything that he has done or can do in the Bible, and he chose to die for our sins, it puts this in this different perspective. He chose to do the one thing for us. Excuse me, I'm sorry. He chose to do the one thing for us that cost him something. Everything else, he probably, like he created everything else in our universe, he could have just spoke it into existence. He could speak a pile of gold and we'd all be rich and we'd be fine. He could speak anything into existence that he wanted to, but he chose to do the one thing that cost him something. So if God chose to do the one thing for us that cost him something, why don't, if we're willing to trust him for that eternal salvation, for the knowledge that we can go to heaven, why do we trust anything else? Because, it may not be today that you're trusting in wealth. I know I don't have a wealth to speak of. I know I don't have necessarily this amazing fame and reputation among all the people that I know that I can trust on to get me out of trouble in the day of evil. But I know that I can trust that my God has saved me. And if I can trust that about my God, I don't think we should have a problem trusting him for everything else. When the day of evil comes, and again, it doesn't speak specifically what that day of evil is. It doesn't always mean death. But when the day of evil comes in your life, where is your trust going? This rich man trusted in his riches. The successful man trusted in his achievements and everything that he could do. What are you trusting in? If God is your trust, then you have to trust that God will take care of your need, maybe for riches. Philippians 4:19 tells us that, but my God shall supply all your needs according to his riches in glory by Christ Jesus. So if you're going to trust in God, you need to trust that he could take care of your finances. You may not trust in your own riches, but if you're not trusting in God for your needs, then that's just as much as a problem as if you trust in riches rather than trusting in God. If you decide to trust in your reputation and trust in everything that you can do and everything that you're able to obtain as a person, instead of trusting in God, that's also a problem. Matthew 6:25 and 26 puts it this way. Therefore I say unto you, take no thought for your life, what ye shall eat or what ye shall drink, nor yet for your body what ye shall put on. Is not the life more than meat, and the body more than raiment? Behold the fowls of the air, for they sow not, neither do they reap, nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feedeth them. Are ye not much better than they? And sometimes we can try to obtain all these things, whether materialistic or otherwise, that we can do to trust in to get us through this life, to give us some sort of control, to give us some sort of ease of mind when we know things won't always be good. And maybe they're already bad for you. Maybe you're not going through the greatest of time. Maybe you're already feeling like you're in this evil day. So where is your trust? What is your trust placed in? But I think it doesn't have so much to do with what you put your trust in, because you can put your trust in God or say you put your trust in God, but do you fully put your trust in God? Or is it your trust in God and the money that you got from that bonus at work? Is it your trust in God and something that you've been able to obtain that you know will help you through this difficult time? See, because we can make this choice to trust in God, but whether or not we trust in God fully is the question. So again, it doesn't even imply that we have completely no trust in God and we trust in riches and we trust in the success that we can obtain in this life or anything that we can achieve and get us through the day of evil. But is our trust fully in God. And I love what the verse in Matthew says right before the two that I just read. Verse 24 says, "No man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon." So we have a choice, whether that's to seek after wealth that we can put our trust in, to seek after the success in our career, the success in our relationships with our family, the success in having a good reputation, and maybe this achievement of academic excellence or something or other, or a skill that you've been working to obtain. We can have trust in those things, or we can trust in God. And it presents that when the day of evil comes, there's that choice to trust in ourselves or to trust in God. Because ultimately, the man who trusts in his wealth is trusting that wealth because he got the wealth. He trusts in that wealth because he maybe worked hard to obtain the wealth, or he maybe was given the wealth by someone who owed him a debt. It indicates that this wealth is something that he was able to obtain, and therefore his trust was in it. He had counted all the money. He was sure that he would be fine in the day of evil. Or the man who had success, he was sure that his name would last on that piece of land. Maybe he built a statue in his name. I'm sure Nebuchadnezzar felt that way. His success in building the greatest empire known to mankind was certainly a reason why he built a statue of himself and tried to make somebody worship it in the book of Daniel. So where is your trust placed? Because it can either be trust in the one who has saved your soul and can save your soul and can help you with spiritual problems in the day of evil, or we can trust in ourselves and anything that we can obtain in this life. No man can serve two masters. So choosing to trust anything of this world rather than choosing God switches your priority then to serve the world as your master rather than serving God. God is able to redeem your soul and set your path into righteousness. The world can't do that, or anything you obtain from the world can't do that. The Bible tells us clearly in this passage that that's not something that man is able to do. The rich man wasn't able to pay God for his soul. Likewise, the man who had success wasn't able to prevent his own death. So we can be in this point where we put our trust in everything but God, or we can put our trust in something else and in God, in our wealth, in our riches, and our achievements and God, or we can put our trust fully and wholly in the God who can redeem our soul. So a simple thought today, but I think if we think through our daily lives, think about what we do on the daily and whether or not we're truly trusting God, if everything were to go wrong, or if everything were to go perfectly right, if we were to ask ourselves, wherefore should I fear in the days of evil? If you asked yourself that question on a daily basis, well, why should I fear when the evil comes? You're going to be answered by either it's because I'm not going to fear in the day of evil because I have this to rely on, whatever your fallback is, or it's because you know you have your God behind you. And if He's able to save your soul, everything else would probably be a small task from a God who can do anything. So where is your trust placed in this evening?